Hello my fellow riders, this is Chris from Riding Reviews, and today we're going to be talking about the misconceptions of Chinese motorcycles. Now there's something that we hear all the time at Cheap Bikes R Us, and that is, oh, Chinese motorcycles are rubbish, they're crap, they're not to Japanese quality. I even had one guy here, he came here on his YBR 125 and said, oh, I wanted to come and see your motorcycles. At this point we said, all of our motorcycles are Chinese, and he says, I do not want to see any of that crap. At which point I told him that his YBR was actually made in China and he physically wanted to have a fight. Being as I used to be competing in the East Midlands Strongest Man, and I used to box and stuff like that, it's not really a good idea to try and pick a fight with me. But I told him to pretty much do one, and yeah, he did. So I thought that I would talk about some of the places that the Japanese bikes are made, so that you can see that not all motorbikes are crap, shall we say, and not all motorbikes are made where you think they are. So firstly, we have the Honda. Honda is primarily designed in Brazil. The CG125 is Brazilian, the CRF 230 is also Brazilian, and the CB600F. So most people thought they were made in Japan, but they are actually made in Brazil. So next we'll go on to Suzuki. Suzuki make their bikes in the Xi'an factory. They used to produce them there, but as of 2018 they produce them somewhere else, but they didn't deem it necessary to tell me where. Yamaha produces, the YBR is, they make 4,000 units a year for European sale in China, and most of their bikes are made in Thailand, India and the Philippines. I don't think many of them are actually made in Japan anymore. And BMW's engines are made in the same place as majority of all these Chinese motorcycles, and so are Harley Davidson, Piaggio, Lambretta, Royal Alley, and most other bikes that are Japanese have at least one or two Chinese components. So where did the myth that Chinese bikes are all rubbish come from? 10 years ago they were unreliable, they had problems with their wiring looms. Engines, not usually an issue. As long as you service your engines, you don't generally get a problem with them. But Chinese have a tendency of not tightening up their bolts, not using Loctite and stuff like that. At Cheap Bikes R Us, we spend about an hour and a half to 2 hours on every bike, checking all the nuts and bolts, Loctiting them, and you will notice when you do buy a bike and grab it from us that all of them will have like pen marks on all the nuts and bolts. All the pen marks are to show that the bike has been PDI'd, and each of the bolts with the mark on have been checked and torqued to what they're supposed to be. Some of them, like the keyways, they come pre-torqued, but we torque them up anyway just to make doubly sure, and we test ride every single bike that comes out from Cheap Bikes R Us. Most of them will have somewhere in the region of 6 miles on them. None of them would have any more than 10 miles. So just take that into consideration when you go and try and buy a bike from somewhere else. If the bike's got more than 10 miles, it's pretty much classed as second hand. So there may not be anything wrong with that bike, but maybe you should look for a little bit of a discount, shall we say. And remember, every single motorbike you buy from a motorbike shop has to have warranty, unless it states that it is spares and repairs. So for all brand new bikes, they have to come with at least 1 year's warranty, and that would be a parts and labour warranty. All the second-hand bikes by law have to come with a 3 months warranty. Also, if you buy a bike off of eBay second-hand, in theory, you can take that bike back within 6 months. That in theory is from everybody. Whether that actually works in practice is two different things. I don't think there's somebody selling a second-hand bike. If you turned up at their door 6 months or 5 months after they sold it and said, I want my money back, I think they'd probably tell you to go away. So let's talk about some of the improvements that they've made on the Chinese motorbikes from, say, 10 years ago to today. Firstly, the wiring is a massive amount better. What they tended to do before in China is they would solder everything without flux. Problem with that is when you solder stuff without flux, the weather gets into the solder and it will eat it up eventually. But now they use a better quality solder, a better quality wire, more cores in the wire, so it means that the wiring is a lot better. Also, most of them are in universal plugs. Japanese bikes tend to use majority of waterproof plugs. Chinese are now moving on to waterproof plugs, but not every bike has them. All Euro 4 spec motorbikes have to have fuel injection, they have to have combined braking, and they have to have the headlights all the time. Chinese, what they tend to do with their bikes is they will get a older Euro 3 model bike and just modify it to the point that it becomes Euro 4 compliant. Most of the engines in all of these bikes are pretty much the same. They're all based on Suzuki's or Hondas. So yeah, things like all the Yamazaki's, all the majority of the Lex motors and stuff like that, all their engines are made in a factory called Zhongsheng, and they produce pretty much all the motorbike engines for the Chinese, 90, maybe 80, 90%, something like that. But their output is over 1 million engines a year. So as you can see, it's a lot better. Now, you can go and buy a Japanese bike, and what they tend to be better on the Japanese is they will use the top amount of power that a bike can produce. So majority of their bikes are up in the 14 horsepower on a 125cc, but majority of the Chinese comes in at the 10 to 12 horsepower range. Reason for that is Chinese want their bikes to last a long time, so they reduce the amount of top power that they can produce, and it just means that the longevity of the engine will last longer. All Chinese bikes will need to be serviced after the first 300 miles, and that's just for the running in process. You're supposed to keep them at 75% of the pressure, 75% of the power, and not go into the 100% mark. If needs be, the power's there, but it's better for the engine over the long period that you running them in correctly. I've had several people from Cheap Bikes R Us come in, and there was one chap in particular, and he did his servicing more often than it's suggested. So he was doing his servicing every month on his own, and he had 3 different bikes off of us, and each one of those bikes did 75,000 kilometers before he decided that he wanted to move up. After we sold them to someone else afterwards with a 3 months warranty, that person didn't look after them, that person didn't service them, and they lasted not that much more. So servicing with all Chinese and Japanese bikes is key. So I hope you like this vlog. As you can see, we have quite a lot of bikes in Cheap Bikes R Us, and last week we sold like 50, so the coronavirus isn't slowing us down much. So if you like my video, please subscribe, comment below, hit that thumbs up, thumbs down, hit that notification bell to stay updated to all my latest content. But as always, ride safe.